So we are starting the chapter 11, that is Organism and Populations. Our living world is fascinating, diverse and amazingly complex. We can try to understand its complexity by investigating processes at various levels of biological organization. Macromolecules, cells, tissues, organs, individual organisms, population, communities, ecosystem and biomes. At any level of biological organization, we can ask two types of questions. For example, when we hear the bulbul singing early morning in the garden, we may ask, how does the bird sing? Or why does the bird sing? The how type questions seek the mechanism behind the process, while the why type question seek the significance of the process. For the first question in our example, the answer might be in terms of the operation of the voice box and the vibrating bone in the bird. Whereas for second question, the answer may lie in the bird's need to communicate with its mate during breeding season. When you observe nature around you with a scientific frame of mind, you will certainly come up with many interesting questions of both types. Why are night blooming flowers generally white? How does the bee know which flower has nectar? Why does cactus have so many thorns? How does the chick spears recognize her own mother, and so on? You have already learnt in previous classes that ecology is a subject which studies the interaction among organisms and between the organism and its physical abiotic environment. Ecology is basically concerned with four levels of biological organization: organism, populations, community and biomes. These are the four levels of biological organization: organism, population, communities and biomes. In this chapter, we explore ecology at population levels. First is populations. We are starting the population attributes. In nature, we rarely find isolated single individuals of any species. Majority of them live in group in a well-defined geographical area, share or compete for similar resources, potentially interbreed and thus constitute a population, potentially interbreed and thus constitute a population. Although the term interbreeding implies sexual reproduction, a group of individuals resulting from even asexual reproduction is also generally considered a population for the purpose of ecological studies. Although the term interbreeding implies sexual reproduction, a group of individuals resulting from even asexual reproduction is also generally considered a population for the purpose of ecological studies. All the cormorants in a wetland, rats in an abandoned dwelling, teakwood trees in a forest tract, bacteria in culture plate, and lotus plants in a pond are some examples of a population. Okay? In earlier chapter, you have learned that although an individual organism is the one that has to cope with a changed environment, it is at the population level that natural selection operates to evolve the desired traits. Population ecology is therefore an important area because it links ecology to population genetics and evolution. Population ecology is therefore an important area because it links ecology to population genetics and evolution. किसको लिंक करती है? ecology to population genetics and evolution. Clear? A population has certain attributes, whereas an individual organism does not. Population को certain attributes होती है, while individual organism does not have that. An individual may have births and deaths, but a population has birth rate and death rates. In a population, these rates refer to a per capita birth and deaths. The rates hence expressed are change in number, increase or decrease with respect to members of the population. With respect to members of the population. Here is an example. If in a pond there were 20 lotus plants last year and through reproduction 8 new plants are added, taking the current population to 28. We calculate the birth rate as 8 upon 20, that is 0.4 offspring per lotus per year. Again I am repeating that. Here is an example. If in a pond there were 20 lotus plants last year and through reproduction 8 new plants are added, taking the current population to 28. We calculate the birth rate as 8 upon 20, that is 0.4. Clear? Offspring per lotus per year. Offspring per lotus per year. If 4 individuals in a laboratory population of 40 fruit flies died during a specified time interval, say a week, the death rate in the population during that period is 4 upon 40. That is 0.1 individuals per fruit fly per week. Clear? 4 individuals in a laboratory population of 40 fruit fly died during a specified time interval. तो डेथ रेट होगी 4 upon 40, that is 0.1 individuals per fruit fly per week. Another attribute characteristic of a population is sex ratio. An individual is either a male or a female, but a population has sex ratio. Example, 60% of the population are females and 40% male. Clear? 60% of the population are females and 40% males. A population at any given time is composed of individuals of different ages. If the age distribution, that is percent individual of a given age or age group, is plotted for the population, the resulting structure is called an age pyramid. If the age distribution, that is percent individual of a given age or age group, is plotted for the population, the resulting structure is called as an age pyramid, which is shown in the figure 11.1. For a human population, the age pyramids generally show age distribution of males and females in a diagram. The shape of the pyramids reflect the growth status of the population. First, whether it is growing, second, that is stable, और थर्ड, that is declining. यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है डायग्राम, जिसमें नीचे एक्सपांडिंग दिया हुआ है प्री रिप्रोडक्टिव, रिप्रोडक्टिव, पोस्ट रिप्रोडक्टिव. नीचे से ऊपर जा रहा है, बढ़ता हुआ, ठीक है ना, कम होता हुआ तो उसे एक्सपांडिंग कहते हैं. स्टेबल में नीचे सेकंड डायग्राम दिया हुआ है और डिक्लाइनिंग का डायग्राम दिया हुआ है थर्ड. Representation of the age pyramids for human population. The size of the population tells us a lot about its status in the habitat. Whatever ecological processes we wish to investigate in a population, be it the outcome of competition with another species, the impact of a predator, or the effect of a pesticide application, we always evaluate them in terms of any change in the population size. Whatever ecological processes we wish to investigate in a population, be it the outcome of competition with another species, the impact of a predator, or the effect of a pesticide application, we always evaluate them in terms of any change in the population size. The size in nature could be as low as less than 10, as Siberian cranes at Bharatpur wetlands in any year. That is less than 10, as low Siberian cranes at Bharatpur wetlands in any year, or go into millions, that is Chalibodomonas in a pond. लो में है साइबेरियन क्रेन्स, गो इनटू मिलियंस में है चैलिमेडोमोनास इन ए पॉन्ड. Population size, technically called population density, designated as capital N, need not necessarily be measured in numbers only. It's a true statement. Population size, technically called population density. Population size को technically क्या कहते हैं? Population density. Denote करते हैं capital N से. Need not necessarily be measured in numbers only. Although total number is generally the most appropriate measure of population density, it is in some cases either meaningless or difficult to determine. In an area, if there are 200 carat grass, that is Parthenium hysterophorus plants, but only a single huge banyan tree with a large canopy, stating that the population density of banyan is low relative to the carrot grass amounts to underestimating the enormous role of the banyan in that community. In an area, if there are 200 carat grass, that is Parthenium hysterophorus plants, but only a single huge banyan tree with a large canopy, stating that the population density means population size of the banyan is low relative to that of the carrot grass, amounts to underestimating the enormous role of the banyan in that community. In such cases, the percent cover or biomass is a more meaningful measure of the population size. In such cases, the percent cover or biomass is a more meaningful measure of the population size. Total number is again not an easily adoptable measure if the population is huge and counting is impossible or very time consuming. If you have a dense laboratory culture of bacteria in a petri dish, what is the best measure to report its density? Can you tell me the answer? If you have a dense laboratory culture of bacteria in a petri dish, what is the best measure to report its density? That is, colony forming units. CFU is calculated from a diluted sample. It's suitable for that. Sometimes, for certain ecological investigations, there is no need to know the absolute population densities. Relative densities serve the purpose equally well. Clear? Total number is again not an easily adaptable measure if the population is huge and counting is impossible or very time consuming. Clear? Sometimes for a certain ecological investigations there is no need to know the absolute population densities. Relative densities serve the purpose equally well. For instance, the number of fish caught per trap is good enough measure of its total population density in the lake. For instance, the number of fish caught per trap is good enough measure of its total population density in the lake. We are mostly obliged to estimate population sizes indirectly, without actually counting them or seeing them. The tiger census in our national parks and tiger reserves is often based on pug marks and fecal pellets. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट लाइन है, यहाँ से क्वेश्चन बहुत बार आ चुका है मॉक्स में और पीवाई के. The tiger census in our national park and tiger reserves is often based on pug marks and fecal pellets. किस पे बेस्ड है? Pug marks and fecal pellets. The tiger census in our national park and tiger reserves is often based on pug marks and fecal pellets. Clear? हो गया माइंड में फिट? किस पे बेस्ड है? On pug marks and fecal pellets. आ गया समझ? Next topic is population growth. The size of a population for any species is not a static parameter. It's not a static parameter. It's a true state. It keeps changing with time depending on various factors including food availability, predation pressure and adverse weather. Assertion reason बन सकता है यहाँ से. The size of the population for any species is not a static parameter because it keeps changing with time depending on various factors including food availability, predation, pressure and adverse weather. In fact, it is these changes in population density that gives us some idea of what is happening to the population, whether it is flourishing or declining. Whatever might be the ultimate reasons, the density of a population in a given habitat during a given period fluctuates due to change in 4 basic processes, 2 of which, natality and immigration, contribute to an increase in population density, and 2, mortality and immigration, decrease. Clear? Fluctuate due to changes in 4 basic processes, that is, 2 of which, natality and immigration, contribute to an increase in population density, and 2, mortality and immigration, to a decrease. First point, that is natality. It refers to the number of births during a given period in the population that are added to the initial density. Second is mortality. It is the number of deaths in a population during a given period. Third is immigration. Immigration is the number of individuals of the same species that have come into the habitat from elsewhere during the time period under consideration. Immigration means ana. Fourth is immigration. Immigration is the number of individuals of the population who left the habitat and gone elsewhere during the time period under consideration. Means छोड़ के चले जाना, इमाइग्रेशन का. यहाँ पे डायग्राम भी दिया हुआ है फिगर 11.2 में. पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी बताई हुई है, ठीक है, जिसमें नेटलिटी और इमिग्रेशन दोनों प्लस प्लस और माइनस माइनस, मोर्टेलिटी और इमाइग्रेशन, ठीक है. सो इफ n is the population density at time t, then its density at time t plus 1 is n t plus 1 is equal to n t plus bracket b plus I minus bracket t plus e. क्लियर? ठीक है. नेटलिटी और इमिग्रेशन इंक्रीज करते हैं और इमाइग्रेशन और मोर्टेलिटी डिक्रीज करते हैं, ठीक है. यहाँ पे जो फॉर्मूला वो एन टी प्लस 1 इज इक्वल टू एन टी प्लस बी प्लस आई माइनस डी प्लस ई, मीन्स बर्थ प्लस इमिग्रेशन माइनस डेथ प्लस immigration. You can see from the above equation, figure 11.2, that population density will decrease if the number of birth plus the number of immigrants, that is B plus I, is more than the number of deaths plus the number of immigrants, that is D plus E. B plus I is more than the number of deaths plus the number of immigrants, that is D plus E. Under normal conditions, births and deaths are the most important factor influencing population density. The other two factors assuming importance only under special condition. ठीक है, normal condition में birth and death are the most important factor. Also other two factor है immigration and immigration are assuming importance only under special condition. For instance, if a new habitat is just being colonized, immigration may contribute more significantly to the population growth than birth rate. ठीक है, इफ ए न्यू हैबिटेट इज जस्ट बीइंग कॉलोनाइज्ड तो वहाँ पे इमिग्रेशन में कंट्रीब्यूट मोर सिग्निफिकेंटली टू पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ देन बर्थ रेट। इमिग्रेशन ज़्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट करेगा पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ के लिए किसके कंपैरिजन में, बर्थ रेट्स। ठीक है, क्लियर। नेक्स्ट इज ग्रोथ मॉडल्स। Does the growth of a population with time show any specific and predictable pattern? We have been concerned about unbridled human population growth and problems created by it in our country. And it is therefore natural for us to be curious if different animal populations in nature behave the same way or show some restraints on growth. Perhaps we can learn a lesson or two from nature on how to control population growth. First is exponential growth. We are going to read the first point, that is exponential growth. Resource, that is food and space availability, is obviously essential for the unimpeded growth of a population. Ideally, when resources in the habitat are unlimited, each species has the ability to realize fully its innate potential to grow in number. As Darwin observed while developing his theory of natural selection. Then the population grows in an exponential or geometric fashion. If in a population of size n, the birth rates, not total number but per capita births, are represented as B, and death rate, again per capita death rate, as D, then the increase or decrease in n during a unit time period t, that is dn upon dt, will be dn upon dt is equal to b minus d into n. Let b minus d is equal to r, then dn upon dt is equal to rn. Again I am repeating that. Close your eyes and listen it properly with focused mind. dn upon dt is equal to b minus d into n. Let b minus d is equal to r, then dn upon dt is equal to r n. ठीक है, b minus d को r किया है तो वहाँ पे जो फर्स्ट था dn upon dt is equal to b minus d into n, तो वहाँ पे b minus d की जगह r रख दिया है, तो इक्वेशन होगी dn upon dt is equal to r into n. The r in this equation is called the intrinsic rate of natural increase and is very important parameter chosen for assessing impacts of any biotic or abiotic factors on population growth. ये important line है. The r in this equation is called the intrinsic rate of natural increase. And is very important parameter chosen for assessing impacts of any biotic or abiotic factors on population growth. To give you some idea about the magnitude of R values, for the Norway rate, the R is 0.015 and for the floor beetle is 0.12. It is 0.12. And for Norway rate, the R is 0.015. The R value for human population in India was 0.0205. Find out the current R value. For calculating it, you need to know the birth rates and death rates. Again, I am repeating that. To give you some idea about the magnitude of R values, for the Norway rate, the R is 0.015 and for the floor beetle it is 0.12. In 1981, the R value for human population in India was 0.0205. Find out what the current R value is. For calculating it, you need to know the birth rate and death rate. The above equation describes the exponential or geometric growth pattern of a population. In figure, it is given there and results in a J-shaped curve when we plot n in relation to time. If you are familiar with the basic calculus, you can derive the integral form of the exponential growth equation as nt is equal to n naught e की power rt. ठीक है? The above equation describes the exponential or geometric growth pattern of a population. ठीक है? जो exponential और geometric growth pattern होता है and results in a J-shaped. कैसा होता है? J-shaped curve when we plot n in relation to time. ठीक है? The above equation describes the exponential or geometric growth pattern of a population and results in a J-shaped curve when we plot n in relation to time. If you are familiar with the basic calculus, you can derive the integral form of the exponential growth equation as nt is equal to n naught e की power rt. Here it is important where nt is equal to population density after time t and n0 is equal to population density at time 0 and r is intrinsic rate of natural increase and e is the base of natural logarithm whose value is 2.71828. 2.71828. क्लियर? डायग्राम दिया हुआ है यहाँ पे. ठीक है? इधर एक्स एक्सिस पे टाइम है और वाई एक्सिस पे पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी है. ठीक है? जे शब्द है फर्स्ट वाला जिसमें when responses are not limiting the growth plot is exponential which result in J shape. और बी वाला दिखाया हुआ है when response are limiting the growth plot is logistic. ठीक है? लॉजिस्टिक कब बनेगा? जब लिमिटिंग ग्रोथ हो. ठीक है? when response are limiting the growth plot is logistic. K is carrying capacity. ठीक है? डायग्राम ए वाले में दिखी हुई है इक्वेशन dn/dt इज इक्वल टू आर एन, जो कि है प्लॉट जब एक्सपोनेंशियल होगा when resources are not limiting, that is unlimited. और dn/dt इज इक्वल टू आर एन k माइनस n/k कब होगा? जब रिसोर्सेज आर लिमिटिंग द ग्रोथ प्लॉट इज लॉजिस्टिक एंड k इज कैरिंग कैपेसिटी. ठीक है? nt इज इक्वल टू n0 e की पावर rt. nt population density after time t, n naught is equal to population density at time 0. r is intrinsic rate of natural increase. e is the base of natural logarithm. Any species growing exponentially under unlimited resource condition can reach enormous population density in a shorter time. ठीक है? Darwin showed how even a slow growing animal like elephant could reach enormous numbers in the absence of checks. Following is an anecdote popularly narrated to demonstrate dramatically how fast a huge population could build up while growing exponentially. ठीक है? ये पैराग्राफ दिया हुआ है जो कि कुछ काम का नहीं, बट फिर भी स्पीड में एक बार पढ़ देता हूँ. ठीक है? Listen it. The king and the minister sat for a chess game. The king confident of winning the game, was ready to accept any bet promised by the minister. The minister humbly said that if he won, he wanted only some wheat grain, the quantity of which is to be calculated by placing on the chessboard 1 grain in square 1, then 2 in square 2, then 4 in square 3, and 8 in square 4, and so on, doubling each time the previous quantity of wheat on the next square until all the 64 squares were filled. The king accepted the seemingly silly bet and started the game, but unluckily for him, the minister won. The king felt that fulfilling the minister's bet was so easy. He started with a single grain on the first square and proceeded to fill. He started with a single grain on the first square and proceeded to fill the other squares following minister's suggested procedure. But by the time he covered half the chessboard, the king realized to his dismay that all the wheat produced in his entire kingdom pooled together would still be inadequate to cover all the 64 squares. Now think of a tiny paramecium starting with just one individual and through binary fission doubling in numbers every day. And imagine what a mind-boggling population size it would reach in 64 days, provided food and space remain unlimited. Clear? Story thing. Only. Now the second is logistic growth. No population of any species in nature has at its disposal unlimited resource to permit exponential growth. No population of any species in nature has at its disposal unlimited resource to permit exponential growth. This leads to competition between individuals for limited resources. Eventually, the fittest individual will survive and reproduce. Eventually, the fittest individual will survive and reproduce. The government of many countries have also realized this fact and introduced various restraints with a view to limit human population growth. In nature, a given habitat has enough resource to support a maximum possible number. In nature, a given habitat has enough resource to support a maximum possible number, beyond which no further growth is possible. Let us call this limit as nature's carrying capacity, capital K, for that species in that habitat. A population growing in a habitat with limited resources show initially a lag phase followed by a phase of acceleration and deceleration and finally an asymptote when the population density reaches the carrying capacity. ये बहुत important line है. A population growth in a habitat with limited resources show initially a lag phase followed by phase of acceleration and deceleration and finally an asymptote when the population density reaches the carrying capacity. जब population density carrying capacity को reach करेगी and finally an asymptote show करेगी. ठीक है. A plot of capital N in relation to time t results in sigmoid curve. A plot of N in relation to time t results in sigmoid curve. लॉजिस्टिक ग्रोथ में कौन सी कर्व आती है? सिग्मोइड. और एक्सपोनेंशियल में जे शेप. ई जे एल एस से याद रख सकते हैं. लॉजिस्टिक में सिग्मोइड एल एस. ठीक है. ए प्लॉट ऑफ एन in relation to time t results in a sigmoid curve. This type of population growth is called Verhulst-Pearl logistic growth. This type of population growth is called Verhulst-Pearl logistic growth and is described by the following equation, that is dn upon dt is equal to rn bracket k minus n upon k. ठीक है. dn upon dt is equal to rn bracket k minus n upon k, where n is equal to population density at time t, r is equal to intrinsic rate of natural increase and k is carrying capacity. Clear? n is equal to population density at time t, r is इंट्रिंसिक रेट ऑफ नेचुरल इंक्रीज. एन जो है पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी एट टाइम टी है, आर जो है इंट्रिंसिक रेट ऑफ नेचुरल इंक्रीज है, के कैरिंग कैपेसिटी है. ठीक है. सिंस रिसोर्स फॉर ग्रोथ फॉर मोस्ट एनिमल्स पॉपुलेशन आर फाइनाइट and become limiting sooner or later, the logistic growth model is considered a more realistic one. कौन सा जो growth model है वो realistic है? Logistic. The logistic growth model is considered a more realistic one. कौन सा वाला? Logistic growth model is considered a more realistic one. Gathered from government census data, the population figures for India for the last 100 years, plot them and check which growth pattern is evident. Next is life history variation. Population evolved to maximize their reproductive fitness, also called Darwinian fitness, that is high R value, in the habitat in which they live. Under a particular set of selection pressures, organisms evolve towards the most efficient reproductive strategy. Some organisms breed only once in their lifetime, that is Pacific salmon fish and bamboo, while the other breeds many times during their lifetime, that is most birds and mammals breed only once in their lifetime में आते हैं Pacific salmon fish, सलमन भाई, ठीक है, salmon fish and bamboo क्या करते हैं? Breed only once, while other breed many times during their lifetime. Example, most birds and mammals. Some produce a large number of small sized offspring. Examples में आते हैं oysters, pelagic fishes, while others produce a small number of large sized offspring, that is birds and mammals. So which is desirable for maximizing fitness? Clear? Some produce a large number of small sized offspring जो large number में produce करते हैं उनमें आते हैं oyster और pelagic fishes, while other produce a small number of large sized offspring, means human being जैसे birds and mammals जो small number कम नंबर में प्रोड्यूस करते हैं बट लार्ज साइज्ड ऑफस्प्रिंग प्रोड्यूस करते हैं जैसे कि भैंसा. So which is desirable for maximizing fitness? Ecologists suggest that life history traits of organisms have evolved in relation to the constraints imposed by the abiotic and biotic components of the habitat in which they live. Evolution of life history traits in different species is currently an important area of research being conducted by ecologists. Evolution of life history traits in different species is currently an important area of research being conducted by ecologists. Next is population interactions. Can you think of any natural habitat on Earth that is inhabited just by a single species? There is no such habitat, and such a situation is even inconceivable. For any species, the minimal requirement is one more species on which it can feed. Minimum requirement is one or more species on which it can feed. Even a plant species which makes its own food cannot survive alone. It needs soil microbes to break down the organic matter in soil and return the inorganic nutrients for absorption. And then how will the plant manage pollination without an animal agent? It is obvious that in nature animals, plants and microbes do not and cannot live in isolation but interact in various ways to form a biological community. Even in minimal communities, many interactive linkages exist, although all may not be readily apparent. It's true statement. Interspecific interaction arises from the interaction of the population of two different species. Interspecific international. इससे याद रख सकते हैं मीन्स टू डिफरेंट स्पीसीज. They could be beneficial, detrimental or neutral, that is neither harm nor benefit, to one of the species or both, assigning a plus sign for beneficial interaction, minus sign for detrimental and 0 for neutral interaction. Let us look at the possible outcomes of interspecific interaction. भर भर के क्वेश्चन आते हैं यहाँ से पक्का श्योर शॉट, मॉक में भी और पीवाई के में भी. ठीक है. इंटरस्पेसिफिक इंटरेक्शन अराइज फ्रॉम द इंटरेक्शन ऑफ पॉपुलेशन ऑफ टू डिफरेंट स्पीसीज. जो टेबल दी हुई है, टेबल में स्पीसीज ए प्लस स्पीसीज बी प्लस, नेम ऑफ इंटरेक्शन इज म्यूचुअलिज्म. प्लस प्लस होंगे तो म्यूचुअलिज्म. स्पीसीज ए माइनस स्पीसीज बी माइनस, नेम ऑफ इंटरेक्शन इज कॉम्पिटिशन. माइनस माइनस में कॉम्पिटिशन. स्पीसीज ए इज प्लस स्पीसीज बी इज माइनस, name of interaction is predation. Plus minus predation. Species A plus species B minus, plus minus parasitism, name of interaction. ठीक है. ठीक है. plus minus parasitism. Species A plus species B 0 means name of interaction is commensalism. plus और 0 means commensalism. commensalism में CO ओ आता है तो मीन्स स्पीसीज बी 0 है मीन्स ओ, ऐसे याद रख सकते हो. प्लस और 0 commensalism. ठीक है. और एल को प्लस कर सकते हो वहाँ पर. ठीक है. एल की जगह ऐसे याद रख सकते हो. ठीक है. स्पीसीज ए इज माइनस स्पीसीज बी इज 0, नेम ऑफ इंटरेक्शन इज amensalism. माइनस एंड 0 इज amensalism. ठीक है. बोथ द स्पीसीज बेनिफिट इन म्यूचुअलिज्म and both lose in competition in their interaction with each other. In both parasitism and predation, only one species benefit parasite and predator respectively. ठीक है. And the interaction is detrimental to the other species. Interaction is the detrimental to the other species, that is host and prey respectively. ठीक है. host and prey. The interaction where one species is benefited and the other is neither benefited nor harmed is called commensalism. One is benefited, another is neither benefited nor harmed is called commensalism. In amensalism, on the other hand, one species is harmed whereas the other is unaffected. Predation, parasitism and commensalism share a common characteristics. The interacting species live closely together. The interacting species live closely together in predation, parasitism and commensalism. They share a common characteristic, that is the interacting species live closely together. Closely together live करेंगे किसमें? Parasitism, predation और commensalism. PPC. प्रेडेशन, पैरासिटिज्म, commensalism. ठीक है. फर्स्ट पढ़ रहे हैं अपन प्रेडेशन. What would happen to all the energy fixed by the autotrophic organism if the community has no animals to eat the plants? You can think of predation as nature's way of transferring to higher trophic levels the energy fixed by plants. When we think of predator and prey, most probably it is the tiger and the deer that readily come to our mind. But a sparrow eating any seed is no less a predator. But a sparrow eating any seed is no less a predator. Although animals eating plants are categorized separately as herbivore, they are in a broad ecological context not very different from predators. Animal eating plant are categorized separately as herbivore. They are in a broad ecological context not very different from predators. Besides acting as conduits for energy transfer across trophic levels, predators play other important roles. कौन? Predator play other important roles besides acting as conduits for energy transfer across trophic levels. Clear? Again I am repeating repeating that besides acting as conduits for energy transfer across trophic levels, predators play other important roles. They keep prey population under control, but for predators, prey species could achieve very high population densities and cause ecosystem instability. Besides acting as a conduit for energy transfer across trophic level, predator play other important roles. Predator keep prey population under control, but for predators, prey species could achieve very high population densities and cause ecosystem instability. When certain exotic species are introduced into a geographical area, they become invasive and start spreading fast because the invaded land does not have its natural predator. What is the reason behind that? Because the invaded land does not have its natural predator. उसकी पास क्या नहीं है? उसका natural predator ही नहीं. ये उसका reason है. ठीक है? Once again I am repeating that point. You can once set in your mind because it's a very important line. ठीक है? समझ गए? When certain exotic species are introduced into a geographical area, they become invasive and start spreading fast because the invaded land does not have its natural predators. The prickly pear cactus introduced into Australia in the year 1920s caused havoc by spreading rapidly into millions of hectares of rangeland. The prickly pear cactus introduced into Australia in the year 1920s caused havoc by spreading rapidly into millions of hectares of rangeland. इसमें आता है प्रेडेशन के अंदर आता है एग्जाम्पल. ठीक है. Finally, the invasive cactus was brought under control only after a cactus feeding predator, that is, a moth from its natural habitat was introduced into the country. Finally, the invasive cactus was brought under control only after a cactus feeding predator, a moth from its natural habitat was introduced into the country. Clear? Understood? Biological control methods adopted in agricultural pest control are based on the ability of the predator to regulate prey population. Biological control methods adopted in agricultural pest control are based on the ability of predator to regulate their prey population. Agricultural pest control जो होती है वो are based on the ability of the predator to regulate prey population. ठीक है. जो मेथड्स होती है एग्रीकल्चर में पेस्ट कंट्रोल की बेस्ड होती है एबिलिटी ऑफ द प्रेडेटर टू रेगुलेट प्रे पॉपुलेशन. प्रेडेटर्स ऑल्सो हेल्प इन मेंटेनिंग स्पीसीज डाइवर्सिटी इन ए कम्युनिटी. इसमें हेल्प करते हैं और स्पीसीज डाइवर्सिटी बाय रेड्यूसिंग द इंटेंसिटी ऑफ द कॉम्पिटिशन अमंग कॉम्पिटिंग प्रे स्पीसीज. क्लियर? Predators also help in maintaining species diversity in a community by reducing the intensity of competition among competing prey species. In the rocky intertidal communities of the American Pacific coast, the starfish pisister is an important predator. In a field experiment, when all the starfish were removed from an enclosed intertidal area, more than 10 species of invertebrates became extinct within a year because of interspecific competition. Clear? Again I am repeating that. It's an important point because in the rocky intertidal community of the American Pacific coast, the starfish pisister is an important predator. In a field experiment, when all the starfish were removed from an enclosed intertidal area, more than 10 species of invertebrates become extinct within a year. Species more than 10 of invertebrates. किसकी invertebrates को change करके vertebrates कर सकता है, but correct है invertebrates become extinct within a year because of interspecific competition. क्या reason था? Because of interspecific competition. इंटर की जगह यहाँ पे चेंज कर सकता है, बट करेक्ट है because of inter-specific competition. If a predator is too efficient and overexploits its prey, then the prey might become extinct, and following it, the predator will also become extinct for lack of food. This is the reason why predators in nature are prudent. Clear? If a predator is too efficient and overexploits its prey, then the prey might become extinct, and following it, the predator will also become extinct for lack of food. This is the reason why predators in nature are prudent. Prey species have evolved various defenses to lessen the impact of predation. Some species of insect and frogs are cryptically colored, that is camouflaged, to avoid being detected easily by the predator. Some are poisonous and therefore avoided by the predator. The monarch butterfly is highly distasteful to its predator bird because of a special chemical present in its body. Monarch butterfly is highly distasteful to its predator bird because of a special chemical present in its body. Interestingly, the butterfly acquires this chemical during its caterpillar stage by feeding on a poisonous weed. Clear? For plants, herbivores are the predators. Plants के लिए herbivores are the predators. Nearly 25% of all insects are known to be phytophagous, that is, feeding on plant sap and other parts of the plant. Nearly 25% of all आ गया means important. Nearly 25% of all insects are known to be phytophagous, that is, feeding on plant sap and other parts of the plant. The problem is particularly severe for plants because, unlike animals, they cannot run away from their predators. Plants therefore have evolved an astonishing variety of morphological and chemical defenses against herbivores. Thorns in acacia and cactus are the most common morphological means of defense. ठीक है? Thorns में acacia और cactus. Thorns are the most common morphological means of defense. Many plants produce and store chemical that make the herbivore sick when they are eaten, inhibit feeding or digestion, disrupt its reproduction or even kill it. You must have seen the weed Calotropis growing in abundant fields. The plant produces highly poisonous cardiac glycosides. कौन? Calotropis क्या produce करता है? Highly poisonous cardiac glycosides, and that is why you never see any cattle or goats browsing on this plant. A wide variety of chemical substances that we extract from plants on a commercial scale, that is nicotine, caffeine, quinine, strychnine, opium, etc. A wide variety of chemical substances that we extract from plant on a commercial scale, nicotine, caffeine, quinine, strychnine, opium, etc. are produced by them actually as defense against grazers and browsers. Are produced by them actually as defense against grazers and browsers. ठीक है? Clear? So the next is competition. When Darwin spoke of the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest in nature, he was convinced that interspecific competition is a potent force in organic evolution. क्या है? Interspecific competition is a potent force in organic evolution. It is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species compete for the same resource that are limiting. But this is not entirely true. ये completely true नहीं है. Why? Firstly, totally unrelated species could also compete for the same resource. ठीक है? Again, I am repeating that point because it is important. It It is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species compete for the same resource that are limiting. But this is not entirely true. Firstly, totally unrelated species could also compete for the same resource. For instance, in some shallow South American lakes, visiting flamingos and resident fishes compete for their common food, the zooplankton in the lake. For instance, in some shallow South American lakes, visiting flamingos and resident fishes compete for their common food, the zooplankton in the lake. ठीक है, कौन कौन कॉम्पीट कर रहे हैं विजिटिंग फ्लेमिंगो एंड रेसिडेंट फिश फूड के लिए. ठीक है. सेकेंडली, resources need not be limiting for competition to occur. In interference competition, the feeding efficiency of one species might be reduced due to the interfering and inhibitory presence of other species, even if resources, food and species are abundant. ठीक है. Secondly, the resources need not be limiting for competition to occur. ठीक है, limited जरूरी नहीं है. In interference competition, the feeding efficiency of one species might be reduced due to the interfering and inhibitory presence of the other species, even if resources, food and species are abundant. Therefore, competition is best defined as a process in which the fitness of one species measured in terms of its R, that is intrinsic rate of increase, is significantly lower in the presence of another species. Competition is best defined as process in which the fitness of one species is significantly lower in the presence of another species. It is relatively easy to demonstrate in laboratory experiments as ghosts and other experimental ecologists did. When resources are limited, the competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species, but evidence for such competitive exclusion occurring in nature is not always conclusive. ठीक है, ghosts and other experimental ecologists did. When resources are limited, the competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species. But evidence for such competitive exclusion occurring in nature is not always conclusive. Strong and persuasive circumstantial evidence does exist, however, in some cases. Strong and persuasive circumstantial evidence does exist, however, in some cases. The abundant tortoise in Galapagos Island became extinct within a decade after goats were introduced on the island. ठीक है, apparently due to the greater browsing efficiency of the goats. The abundant tortoise in Galapagos Island became extinct within a decade after goats were introduced on the island, apparently due to the greater browsing efficiency of the goats. इसका एग्जाम्पल है कंपटीशन का. ठीक है, am I right? Another evidence for the occurrence of competition in nature comes from what is called competitive release. ठीक है, what is called competitive release. Clear? A species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of a competitively superior species is found to expand its distributional range dramatically when the competing species is experimentally remote. A species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of a competitively superior species is found to expand its distributional range dramatically when the competing species is experimentally remote. Clear? आ रहा है समझ? A species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of competitively superior species found to expand its distributional range dramatically when the competing species is experimentally remote. Connell's elegant field experiment showed that on the rocky sea coasts of Scotland. Again, I am repeating that Connell's elegant field experiment showed that on the rocky sea coast of Scotland, the larger and competitively superior barnacular balanus dominates the intertidal area and excludes the smaller barnacle Chathalomulus from that zone. Connell's elegant field experiment showed that on the rocky sea coast of Scotland, the larger and competitively superior barnacle balanus dominates the intertidal area and excludes the smaller barnacle Chathalomulus from that zone. ठीक है, balanus means बड़ा वाले, ठीक है, superior, Chathalomulus means छोटे वाले को exclude कर दिया, ठीक है. In general, herbivores and plants appear to be more adversely affected by competition than carnivore. कौन adversely affected होते हैं ज़्यादा? Herbivore and plants appear to be more adversely affected by competition than carnivores. Gauss' competitive exclusion principles state that two closely related species competing for the same resource cannot coexist indefinitely, and the competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually. This may be true if resources are limiting but not otherwise. Gauss' competitive exclusion principle states that two closely related species competing for the same resource cannot coexist indefinitely, and the competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually. Clear? This may be true if resources are limiting but not otherwise. Clear? Understood? More recent studies do not support such gross generalizations about competition. More recent studies do not support such gross generalization about competition. While they do not rule out the occurrence of interspecific competition in nature, they point out that species facing competition might evolve mechanisms that promote coexistence rather than exclusion. One such mechanism is resource partitioning. If two species compete for the same resource, they could avoid competition by choosing, for instance, different time for feeding or different foraging patterns. If two species compete for the same resource, they could avoid competition by choosing, for instance, different times for feeding or different foraging patterns. MacArthur showed that 5 closely related species of warblers living on the same tree were able to avoid competition and coexist due to the behavioral differences in their foraging activities. Clear? MacArthur showed that 5 closely related species of warblers living on the same tree were able to avoid competition and coexist due to the behavioral differences in their foraging activities. Next topic is parasitism. Considering that the parasitic mode of life ensures free lodging and meals, it is not surprising that parasitism has evolved in so many taxonomic groups, from plants to higher vertebrates. Many parasites have evolved to be host specific, that is, they can parasitize only a single species of host, in such a way that both host and the parasite tend to co-evolve. That is, if the host evolve a special mechanism for rejecting or resisting the parasite, the parasite has to evolve a mechanism to counteract and neutralize them in order to be successful with the same host species. ठीक है, उसको counteract करके. Clear? In accordance with their lifestyle. चलो एक बार और पढ़ी देता हूँ लाइन. Many parasites have evolved to be host specific in such a way that both host and parasite tend to co-evolve. That is, if the host evolves a special mechanism for rejecting or resisting the parasite has to evolve a mechanism to counteract and neutralize them in order to be successful with same host species. In accordance with their lifestyle, parasites have evolved special adaptation such as the loss of unnecessary sense organ. Clear? In accordance with their lifestyle, parasites evolved special adaptations such as the loss of unnecessary sense organ, presence of adhesive organs or suckers to cling on the host, loss of digestive system and high reproductive capacity. Loss of digestive system and high reproductive capacity. ठीक है, क्या है ये? स्पेशल अडेप्टेशन. ठीक है, किसकी? पैरासाइट्स. In accordance with their lifestyle, parasite evolved special adaptations such as loss of unnecessary sense organ, presence of adhesive organ or suckers to cling on to the host, loss of digestive system and high reproductive capacity. Clear? The life cycles of parasites are often complex, involving one or two intermediate host or vector to facilitate parasitization of its primary host. The life cycle of parasites are often complex, involving one or two intermediate host or vector to facilitate parasitization of its primary host. The human liver fluke a trematode parasite. Human liver fluke वो क्या है? ट्रेमाटोड पैरासाइट है. कंफ्यूज करने के लिए ऑप्शन में नेमाटोड दे देंगे, बट करेक्ट है ट्रेमाटोड पैरासाइट. ठीक है, चेंज कर सकते हैं यहाँ पे, बट कुछ भी. द ह्यूमन लिवर फ्लूक ए ट्रेमाटोड पैरासाइट डिपेंड ऑन टू इंटरमीडिएट होस्ट, दैट इज ए स्नेल एंड अ फिश. इस पे डिपेंड करता है टू इंटरमीडिएट होस्ट, स्नेल एंड फिश, टू कंप्लीट इट्स लाइफ साइकिल. The malarial parasite needs a vector, that is mosquito, to spread to other host. Majority of the parasite harm the host. Majority क्या करते हैं? Harm the host. They may reduce the survival, growth and reproduction of the host and reduce its population density. Majority of the parasite harm the host. They may reduce the survival, growth and reproduction of the host and reduce its population density. It's a true statement. Clear? They might render the host more vulnerable to predation by making it physically weak. Do you believe that an idle parasite should be able to thrive within the host without harming it? Then why didn't natural selection lead to the evolution of such totally harmless parasites? Parasites that feed on the external surface of the host organism are called ectoparasite. ठीक है, रिपीट करने की तो चीज़ नहीं है. The most familiar example of this group are the lice on humans. ठीक है, and ticks on dog. जुए जो होती है ना ह्यूमंस के हेड में, एग्जाम्पल है एक्टोपेरासाइट का, और टिक्स ऑन डॉग. ठीक है. Many marine fishes are infested with ectoparasitic copepods. Many marine fishes are infested with ectoparasitic copepod. Cuscusta, a parasitic plant that is commonly found growing on hedge plant, has lost its chlorophyll and lives in the course of evolution. Cuscuta, a parasitic plant that is commonly found growing on hedge plant, has lost its chlorophyll and lives in the course of evolution. It derives its nutrition from the host plant which it parasites. कहाँ से derive करता है? It derives its nutrition from the host plant which it parasitises. The female mosquito is not considered a parasite, although it needs our blood for reproduction. The female mosquito is not considered a parasite. It's a true statement, although it needs our blood for reproduction. Can you explain why? The reason for this is, can you explain it? It's a very important. ऐसे क्वेश्चन बना रहा है आजकल एनटीए. ठीक है, जो इन टेक्स्ट या फिर जो बीच में क्वेश्चन दिया वही पूछ रहा है. अब इसका आंसर बताओ. ठीक है. The female mosquito is not considered a parasite, although it needs our blood for reproduction, because they don't live in or on a host organism for an extended period of time. It's the answer for that. ठीक है, क्योंकि ज़्यादा समय के लिए नहीं रहते. In contrast, endoparasites are those that live inside the host body at different sites, that is liver, kidney, lungs, red blood cells, etc. ठीक है, कहाँ कहाँ पे रहते हैं? इनसाइड में. कौन? जैसे लिवर, किडनी, lungs, red blood cells, etc. The life cycle of endoparasites are more complex because of their extreme specialization. ये important line आ गई. The life cycle of endoparasites are more complex because of their extreme specialization. Assertion reason बन सकता है, true और false भी बन सकता है यहाँ से. Endoparasite की more complex होती है because of their extreme specialization. Their morphological and anatomical features are greatly simplified while emphasizing their reproductive potential. Morphological and anatomical features are greatly simplified while emphasizing their reproductive potential. Slowly चल रहा है अपन इस चैप्टर में, क्योंकि यहाँ से भी बहुत क्वेश्चन पूछे जाते हैं. Brood parasitism in birds is a fascinating example of parasitism, in which the parasitic bird lay its egg in the nest of its host and lets the host incubate them. Brood parasitism in bird is a fascinating example of parasitism. इसका example है parasitism, in which the parasitic bird lay its egg in the nest of its host and lets the host incubate them. Clear? During the course of evolution, the eggs of the parasitic bird. During the course of evolution, the egg of parasitic bird have evolved to resemble the host's egg in size. In size and color to reduce the chances of the host bird detecting the foreign eggs and ejecting them from the nest. ठीक है? During the course of evolution, the eggs of the parasitic bird have evolved to resemble the host's egg in size and color. किसमें resemble करता है? Size and color. Host egg. ठीक है? The host egg in size and color to reduce the chances of the host bird detecting the foreign eggs and ejecting them from the nest. Try to follow the movement of the cuckoo, that is quail, and the crow in your neighborhood park during the breeding season, spring to summer, and watch brood parasitism in action. ठीक है, करना फ्री हो तो. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट टॉपिक इज कमेंसलिज्म. ठीक है. होस्ट का मतलब होता है पर्सन हु इनवाइट्स गेस्ट टू हिज हर हाउस, ए पर्सन हु इंट्रोड्यूस ए टेलीविजन और रेडियो शो एंड टॉक्स टू द गेस्ट. ठीक है, इसका मतलब होता है होस्ट. कमेंसलिज्म. This is the interaction in which one species benefits and the other is neither benefited nor harmed. One benefits and the other is neither harmed nor benefited. ठीक है? An orchid growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch. An orchid growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch and barnacles growing on the back of a well benefit, while neither the mango tree nor the well derives any apparent benefit. ठीक है, benefit कौन कर रहा है? Epiphyte on a mango branch, the barnacle growing in the back of the well benefit. ठीक है, an orchid growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch and the barnacle growing on the back of the well benefit, while neither the mango tree nor the well benefit, while neither the mango tree nor the well derives any apparent benefit. ठीक है? Again I am repeating that line. An orchid growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch, barnacle growing on the back of a well benefit, while neither the mango tree nor the well derives any apparent benefit. Clear? Now proceed further. The cattle aggregate and grazing cattle in close association, a sight you are most likely to catch if you live in farmed rural areas, is a classic example of commensalism. कौन है? Cattle aggregate and grazing cattle. Cattle aggregate and grazing cattle in close association, a sight you are most likely to catch if you live in farmed rural areas, is a classic example of commensalism. The aggregate always forage close to where the cattle are grazing, because the cattle, as they move, stir up and flush out insects from the vegetation that otherwise might be difficult for the aggregates to find and catch. Okay? Once again I am repeating that, listen it properly. The cattle aggregate and grazing cattle in close association is classic example of commensalism. The aggregate always forage close to where the cattle are grazing. Where the cattle are grazing. Okay? Because the cattle, as they move, stir up and flush out insects from the vegetation that otherwise might be difficult for the aggregates to find and catch. Aggregates का मतलब होता है स्वान. ठीक है? हिंदी में बताऊं? हिंदी में क्या होता है? हिंदी में होता है सफेद बगुला. ठीक है? Another example of commensalism is the interaction between sea anemone that has stinging tentacles and the clownfish that lives among them. The fish gets protection from the predator, which stay away from the stinging tentacles. The anemone does not appear to derive any benefit by hosting the clownfish. Another example of commensalism is the interaction between sea anemone that has stinging tentacles and the clownfish that lives among them. The fish gets protection from the predators, which stay away from the stinging tentacles. The anemone does not appear to derive any benefit by hosting the clownfish. ठीक है? किसको benefit मिलती है यहाँ पे? किसको? The fish get protection. Again I am repeating the commensalism paragraph. This is the interaction in which one species benefits and the other is neither harmed nor benefited. An orchid growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch and the barnacle growing on the back of a well benefit, while neither the mango tree nor the well derives any apparent benefit. The cattle aggregate and the grazing cattle in close association, a sight you are most likely to catch if you live in a farmed rural area, is a classic example of commensalism. The aggregates always forage close to where the cattle are grazing, because the cattle, as they move, stir up and flush out insects from the vegetation that otherwise might be difficult for the aggregates to find and catch. Another example of commensalism is the interaction between sea anemone that has stinging tentacles. क्या है उसके पास? Tentacles. कौन सी? Stinging tentacles. And the clownfish that lives among them. Another example of commensalism is the interaction between sea anemone that has stinging tentacles and the clownfish that lives among them. The fish gets protection from the predator, which stay away from the stinging tentacles. Which stay away from the stinging. क्या करते हैं? Which stay away from the stinging tentacles. ठीक है? Clear? The anemone does not appear to derive any benefit by hosting the clownfish. बेचारों को कुछ भी नहीं मिल रहा है anemone होस्ट करके clownfish. ठीक है? बेनिफिट नहीं मिल रही. यहाँ पे डायग्राम दिया हुआ है. Mutual relationship between fig tree and wasp. A fig flower is pollinated by wasp, और this second में दिया हुआ है wasp laying eggs in a fig fruit. Fig fruit में egg lay कर. ठीक है? अब next topic is our mutualism. Let's start the topic mutualism. उसके पहले अपन वो क्लियर कर लेते हैं commensalism वाला, जो एग्रीगेट वाला था उसका हिंदी मीनिंग बता देता हूँ मैं. ठीक है? बगुला हमेशा उस स्थान के करीब चारा खोजते हैं जहाँ मवेशी चर रहे होते हैं, क्योंकि मवेशी जैसे जैसे चलते हैं हलचल मचाते हैं और कीड़ों को बाहर निकाल देते हैं। वनस्पति जैसे अन्यथा बगुले के लिए ढूंढना मुश्किल हो सकता है, ठीक है। और पकड़ना भी, ठीक है, पकड़ना भी और ये मुश्किल हो सकता है उसके लिए, इसलिए वो बेनिफिट करता है, ठीक है। नाउ आवर टॉपिक इज म्यूचुअलिज्म। दिस इंटरेक्शन confers benefits on both the interacting species. Lichens represent an intimate mutualistic relationship between a fungus and a photosynthesizing alga or cyanobacteria. Lichens represents an intimate mutualistic relationship between a fungus and photosynthesizing algae or cyanobacteria. Similarly, the mycorrhiza are association between fungi and the roots of hair plant. Mycorrhiza किसके बीच association है? Fungi and the roots of hair plants. The fungi help the plant in the absorption of essential nutrients from the soil, while the plant in turn provides the fungi with energy yielding carbohydrate. The fungi help the plant in the absorption of essential nutrients from the soil. कौन हेल्प करता है इसमें? फंगी. while the plant in turn provide the fungi with energy yielding carbohydrate. प्लांट क्या करता है? Provide the fungi with energy yielding carbohydrate. The most spectacular and evolutionary fascinating examples of mutualism are found in plant-animal relationship. Plants need the help of animals for pollinating their flowers and dispersing their seeds. Animals obviously have to be paid fees for the services that plants expect from them. Plants offer rewards or fees in the form of pollen and nectar for pollinators and juicy and nutritious fruits for seed dispersers. Plants offer rewards or fees in the form of pollen and nectar for pollinators and juicy and nutritious fruits for seed dispersers. ठीक है, पॉलिनेटर्स के लिए क्या है? पॉलन एंड नेक्टर, और सीड डिस्पर्सर्स के लिए जूसी एंड न्यूट्रिटियस फ्रूट्स. ये है रिवार्ड, ठीक है. बट द म्यूचुअली बेनिफिशियल सिस्टम शुड ऑलवेज बी सेफगार्ड अगेंस्ट चीटर्स. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, एनिमल दैट ट्राई टू स्टील नेक्टर विदाउट aiding in pollination. Now you can see why plant-animal interaction often involve co-evolution of the mutualist. That is, the evolution of the flower and its pollinator species are tightly linked with one another. In many species of the fig trees, there is a tight one-to-one relationship with the pollinator species of wasp. जो फिगर में दिखाई है, ठीक है, 11.4 ऊपर बताया था. It means that a given fig species can be pollinated only by its partner wasp species and no other species. It's a true statement. It means that a given fig species can be pollinated only by its partner wasp species and no other species. The female wasp uses the fruit not only as an oviposition egg-laying sites, but uses the developing seeds within the fruit for nourishing its larvae. The female wasp uses the fruit not only as an oviposition egg-laying site, but uses the developing seeds within the fruit for nourishing its larva. Clear? But uses the developing seed within the fruit for nourishing its larva. The wasp pollinates the fig inflorescence while searching for suitable egg-laying sites. ठीक है, wasp pollinates the fig inflorescence while searching for suitable egg-laying sites. In return for the favor of pollination, the fig offers the wasp some of its developing seeds as food for the developing wasp larvae. Orchids show a bewildering diversity of floral patterns, many of which have evolved to attract the right pollinator insect, that is bees and bumblebees, and ensure guaranteed pollination by it. जो यहाँ पे डायग्राम दिया हुआ है showing a bee, a pollinator, an orchid flower. ठीक है, a pollinator on orchid flower. Orchids show a bewildering diversity of floral patterns, many of which have evolved to attract the right pollinator insect, bees and bumblebees, and ensure guaranteed pollination by it. Not all orchids offer rewards. It's true statement. Not all orchids offer rewards. The Mediterranean orchid, that is Ophiuchus, employs sexual deceit to get pollination done by a species of bee. One petal of its flower bears an uncanny resemblance to the female of the bee in size, color and marking. Not all orchids offer rewards. The Mediterranean orchid Ophiuchus employs sexual deceit to get pollination done by a species of bee. One petal of its flower bears an uncanny resemblance to the female of the bee in size, color and markings. ठीक है, female of the bee in size, color and marking उसकी resemblance करता है. The male bee is attracted to what it perceives as a female, pseudocopulates with the flower, and during that process is dusted with pollen from the flower. When this same bee pseudocopulates with another flower, it transfers pollen to it and thus pollinates the flower. ठीक है, the male bee is attracted to what it perceives as a female, pseudocopulates with the flower, and during that process is dusted with the pollen from the flower. When this same bee pseudocopulates with another flower, it transfers pollen to it and thus pollinates the flower. Here you can see how co-evolution operates. If the female bee's color pattern changes even slightly for any reason during evolution, pollination success will be reduced unless the orchid flower co-evolves to maintain the resemblance of its petal to the female. If the female bee's color pattern changes even slightly for any reason during evolution, pollination success will be reduced unless the orchid flower co-evolves to maintain the resemblance of its petal to the female. ठीक है, summary we are going to read in a speedy way. As a branch of biology, ecology is the study of relationship of living organisms with the abiotic, that is physiochemical factors, and biotic component, other species of their environment. It is concerned with 4 levels of biological organization: organism, population, community and biome. Organism, population, community and biomes. These are the 4 levels of biological organization. Evolutionary changes through natural selection take place at the population level, and hence population ecology is an important area of ecology. A population is a group of individuals of a given species sharing or competing for similar resources in a defined geographical area. Population have attributes that individual organisms do not: birth rate and death rate, sex ratio and age distribution. ठीक है, these are the attributes. The proportion of different age group of males and females in a population is often presented graphically as age pyramid. Its shape indicates whether a population is stationary, growing or declining. Ecological effect of any factor on a population are generally reflected in its size, that is population density, which may be expressed in different ways, that is numbers, biomes, percent cover, etc., depending on the species. Population grow through birth and immigration and decline through death and immigration. When resources are unlimited, the growth is usually exponential, but when resources become progressively limiting, the growth pattern turns logistic. जब limiting हो जाएगा तो क्या हो जाएगा? Turns logistic. In either case, growth is ultimately limited by the carrying capacity of the environment. The intrinsic rate of natural increase, R, is a measure of the inherent potential of a population to growth. The intrinsic rate of natural increase, that is small r, is a measure of inherent potential of a population to grow. Again, I am repeating that. The intrinsic rate of natural increase, that is r, is a measure of inherent potential of a population to grow. So let's proceed further. In nature, populations of different species in a habitat do not live in isolation but interact in many ways. Depending on the outcome, these interactions between two species are classified as competition. Both species suffer predation and parasitism. One benefit and the other suffers. Commensalism, one benefit and the other is unaffected. Amensalism, one is harmed and the other is unaffected. ठीक है, amensalism minus and 0. One is harmed and other is unaffected. And mutualism, that is both species benefit. Predation is a very important process through which trophic energy transfer is facilitated, and some predators help in controlling their prey population. Predation is a very important process through which trophic energy transfer is facilitated, and some predators helps in controlling their prey population. Plants have evolved diverse morphological and chemical defenses against herbivory. Plants have evolved diverse morphological and chemical defense against herbivory. In a competition, it is presumed that the superior competitive eliminates the inferior, the competitive exclusion principle, but many closely related species have evolved various mechanisms which facilitate their coexistence. Some of the most fascinating cases of mutualism in nature are seen in plant-pollinator interactions. With this, we completed the chapter. Thank you for hearing. बहुत स्लो समझाया है, बहुत स्लो रीड किया है. आशा करता हूँ ब्रेन में सेट हो गया है. थैंक यू फॉर हियरिंग. ठीक है, इम्पोर्टेंट चैप्टर.